All right, so in this test, I'm gonna be comparing my stock Hyzer throws to a lot of Anhyzer in terms of if I was throwing like a Toro, which is a 1 turn and like a 3 fade, or like a very beefy new Halo Star Firebird, what is that, 9504, something like that. Basically discs where you really have to force it on Annie instead of a lot of discs where when you throw an Annie shape, you're actually throwing on a small amount of Hyzer, like 5 degrees of Hyzer, and then it's so close to flat that the disc turns very easily, even if it's an overstable disc, unless it's, you know, extremely overstable. So that's why I'm imagining throwing these extremely overstable discs to really get a comparison of throwing on lots of Annie. However, lately I've been testing a higher pull through, and that seems to be reducing my natural Hyzer a little bit. I don't know if it's because I'm feeling it higher and I'm standing out of my Hyzer posture a little bit, or if it's just the fact that as the arm gets lower, the disc kind of tends to tilt a little more on Hyzer, it feels like for spike Hyzers, you know. But anyways, my Hyzers are still, you know, decently Hyzer amounts, so I think it's still a good comparison. All right, some final thoughts. Even though Anhyzer was easier for me to get my higher power, it doesn't mean I'm going to be throwing Anhyzer more often on the course to get distance, because the Anhyzer shot shape requires more space, and so it's just not as often useful. And then Hyzer releases can have a lot of overlap with Anhyzer shot shapes, variations of S curves from Anhyzer releases. You can get a lot of those variations of S curves from a Hyzer release that then starts to turn. The main difference is with Anhyzer, you might sometimes need it to get the turn immediately out of the hand and then get a harder fade. But then Hyzer has all the other added benefits of the shot shapes that you can get from a Hyzer that you can't get from releasing on Annie. And so that's why you'll see things like, I've done this before, I'm gonna make another video about this eventually, these shot shape comparisons and why Hyzer is so much more common. For example, on the Pro Tour, I've paused at the moment of release every backhand tee shot, and in a full round in a tournament, and over 80% of them were Hyzer, including some rollers. So that's why I practice throwing Hyzer with the tech disc almost exclusively. All my tests are all throwing my normal Hyzer because it's just so much more useful. If you don't want to wait for the video that goes into more detail on that, you can go to techdisc.com/simulator, put in, same speed and spin, launch angle, nose angle, and then just change, the disc stability and the amount of Hyzer and Anhyzer, and just see what shapes you have available to you, and you'll get a wider variety of options from releasing on Hyzer. So the reason I mentioned that about Hyzer being more useful than Anhyzer is because I don't want people to see this video and be like, oh wow, you can get more power on Anhyzer, I'm going to start practicing throwing more Anhyzers. I think it's still a better recommendation to focus your form work on Hyzers, because also people tend to get a little more out of control with their form, I think, when throwing on Anhyzers, because it's easier to kind of crank over on it and throw your whole body into it and maybe tip over your brace or something like that.